The Group. The Group was an unofficial name for a clandestine research organization formed in the Chernobyl exclusion zone following the collapse of the Soviet Union. In Stalker 2, the group was named MDST and were revealed to have split off of a much larger organization. The fall of the Soviet Union in 1991 did nothing to hinder the work of Soviet researchers in the zone. To the contrary, the weakened government of an independent Ukraine proved unable to investigate rumors of strange experiments taking place in the zone, let alone put a stop to them. Although many research projects were discontinued, several projects and their leaders were unwilling to stop their research and continued their work into developing psychotropic weapons and founded the group. At various laboratories in the zone, the group researched psychic weapons and the noosphere, whose existence was established in the way of a trans-global experiment. The group focused their research in its direction and other matters, such as the influence of psychotropic and psychic field radiation on human beings and researching mutations thus induced using Kaimanov emitter, psychic radiation emitted by living beings, as well as large-scale psychic manipulation by the rainbow emitter, which became known much later as the brain scorcher. In 1999, the Ukrainian government created a special commission to investigate reports of strange occurrences and illegal activities in the zone. While the investigation confirmed these allegations, no action was taken. Around 2003, the Agroprom Research Institute, located in the zone, ceased work on agriculture. Instead, they became a front for the group, used to procure equipment and funds not available through other means. By 2004, the top secret research project into electromagnetic weapons conducted by the group at the Jupiter plant was cancelled. The main objective of the group was to influence the noosphere so that flaws in human character could be corrected to eliminate war, crime, and corruption. To do so, an experiment aimed at creating a super-consciousness called the C-consciousness was conducted. 7 volunteers were connected during the experiment, leading to the creation of said super-consciousness, which then attempted to correct the noosphere. The intervention took place on March 4, 2006, and failed due to a power outage. A month later, on April 12, the experiment was performed again, and this time it continued until its completion. However, it did not have the desired effect. Instead, the generators created a rift into the noosphere and allowed it to directly affect the biosphere, creating a large area where physical laws were outright broken and mysterious phenomena not understood by modern science manifested themselves. The zone. The group ultimately broke up as a split occurred among members of the research team that caused the zone to emerge, concerning issues of cleaning up the aftermath of the failed experiment which gave birth to it. This caused approximately a half of the scientists to leave. 3 of them, Lebedev, Suslov, and Kalancha, formed S.T.A.L.K.E.R in order to research the zone and find a way to remove the fracture into the noosphere, or at least contain it so that it can be lived with. Left alone, the C-consciousness attempted to find a way to control the zone. The rift in the noosphere was expanding, and the C-consciousness was attempting to restrain it with their power, but the efforts were endangered by humans. For protection, the scientists created a defense system to guard them against intruders. The primary element of the psychic defense network was the brain scorcher, an experimental psi antenna outside Pripyat. When activated, any human that came into its range was mind-controlled by the C-consciousness and joined the ranks of their agents. Secondary elements were the monolith and its protectors. One lured stalkers into the center of the zone with promises of wealth and wishes coming true. The second actively raided stalkers and defended research facilities, lest unauthorized people learned the secrets of the C-consciousness. It's unknown if following the destruction of the C-consciousness by S.T.A.L.K.E.R, any members of the group remain alive. By the events of Stalker 2, the group official name is revealed to be Ministry of Defense and Secret Technologies, and the conspiracy is much deeper than previously thought. It used to be part of the Soviet Union's research into the noosphere and psi radiation. After the fall of the Soviet Union, the scientists were sponsored by the regulatory board to continue their research into anomalous energy. Some of the projects they worked on, in addition to those previously known, were Leash, BBC Mirror, and the Controller Project. A prototype pod to observe the noosphere was created at Orbita Station, which led to the first plans to attempt to influence the noosphere with what would eventually become C-Consciousness Project. In 2006, the scientists disobeyed their orders and activated C-Consciousness, leading to the accidental creation of the zone. Project X was shut down by the regulatory board. Nevertheless, the scientists continued the research, forming MDST. Afterwards, MDST assisted C consciousness in its operation. It created Monolith and the STALKER agent programs, and ensured the continued operation of the network and related laboratories. Its scientists were protected under S.T.A.L.K.E.R Scientist Protection Project. Clear Sky was in contact with MDST and C consciousness, though its existence via the visuograph in Professor Kalancha lab underneath the base in the swamps. The events leading to the destruction of the Clear Sky faction seemingly also brought the MDST close to destruction, but their continued activities in the years after prove otherwise. Following S.T.A.L.K.E.'s destruction of C consciousness, physical bodies, and one of the X network's central nodes, MDST continued to exist and function in some reduced capacity. They orchestrated the recreation of the Spark faction by S.T.A.L.K.E.R following its destruction after the war's siege on the chemical plant. Later, they sent S.T.A.L.K.E.R instructions to ensure the success of the Second Caribbean experiment, which would re-establish connection between the surviving C consciousness in the noosphere and the X network. MDST's ultimate goal is to assist the C consciousness with the creation of the Shining Zone. There is no contact with any current MDST members, and the sender of freeze and orders to the STALKER agent is left ambiguous, though anecdotal evidence spread among stalkers mentions their sporadic and mysterious appearances. Lab X16. Laboratory 616 is a secret laboratory built near Lake Yantar prior to the 2006 incident. It appears in Stalker Shadow of Chernobyl, and it was cut from Stalker 2. X16 focused on researching one of the side discoveries of the group's research, that living creatures are able to generate direct psi emissions. A biological field emitter, essentially a giant brain, was grown as part of the research using equipment from Lab X18. The lab is located beneath the factory complex at Yantar in a secure underground bunker, sheltered from the outside world. Its structure is fairly uncomplicated, with the main circular chamber resembling the shape of a silo, housing the emitter's mechanisms, and the access halls and research facility where test subjects were kept for study. The lab contains primarily zombified stalkers, snorks, and a lone controller. In Shadow of Chernobyl, X16 was raided by Vasiliev and Ghost, one of the S.T.A.L.K.E.'s companions, before the Mark I arrival. Both men were later separated after being attacked by a controller, which ultimately killed Ghost, while Vasiliev managed to return to the surface only to meet his end at the hands of the numerous zombified stalkers. Sakharov later sends the Mark I down the lab with the objective of shutting down the emitter. After gaining access to the prototype Psi helmet, the Mark I makes his way to the facility and deactivates the emitter. By then, the laboratory is littered with multiple groups of campfires and small fires, some with bones among the wood, dead and mutilated corpses of stalkers in various states of decomposition, the freshest of which are of military personnel and the Monolith faction, which indicate a fierce battle was fought inside not too long before. Originally, X16 Psi emitter was called the Miracle Machine because it created a small-scale emissions, though they were not lethal to anyone distant from the factory complex. As a result of a malfunctioning in its cooling system, the emitter began to create uncontrolled emissions. This caused anyone who was unlucky enough to be caught there while salvaging equipment near it to turn into zombified stalkers, wreaking havoc in Yantar. A stalker team that worked for Sakharov discovered that the emissions were caused by the faulty cooling system. They also discovered that it was cooling an unidentified device located under the complex. This led to the discovery of Lab X16. With this information, Sakharov was able to discover that the cooling device could be repaired from outside Lab X16. He sent S.T.A.L.K.E.R and the Stalker group, led by Lefty, to battle the hordes of zombies in its complex and repair the cooling system. The Death Truck. Death Trucks refer to the ZIL-130S used by the C consciousness to transport their newly brainwashed subjects back into the zone. Most of these poor souls don't survive, however, hence the name Death Truck. At the beginning of the game, Mark I was being sent away in one of these trucks. The trip is cut short when the truck is struck by lightning, making the truck explode and crash. Later, Red found Mark I alive and brought him back to S.T.A.L.K.E.R. Who drive these vehicles is unknown. In the intro video of Shadow of Chernobyl, the driver is wearing a PCZ-9D duty suit, as evidenced by the 4 red-chested panels in the bulletproof vest and somewhat dark color of the suit. This leads some to suspect that the newly inducted subjects drive these trucks, explaining why these stalkers have not yet been given the Monolith colors, or it's to full, unaware people. As Xavier is inspecting the scattered corpses, 2 bodies from Mercenaries and Freedom can also be seen.